And here we go. So Socrates, and I've got diatema in parentheses there. I'll explain that in a minute. But Socrates begins his portion of the dialogue, his speech, for lack of a better word, by doing something similar to what Agathon does at the beginning of his speech. If you remember back to the beginning of Agathon's speech, he says that all of the previous speakers went about it the wrong way. When they were praising Eros, when they were praising love, they weren't really praising love, according to Agathon. They were just praising what love did for us. And so Agathon says we have to talk about the God himself, the God of love, Eros, and we have to explain what makes him so great, and then we can praise why those great things bring great things to us. So he corrects the previous speakers about their manner of speaking and their manner of praising love. And Socrates does the same thing, but for a different reason. Again, this is line, if you've got your book here, it's on page 38, but if you have a different version, line 198D, thereabouts. This is him being ironic. This is him being facetious, okay? I don't think so I'm going to read it that way. He says, I realized how ridiculous I'd been to agree to join with you in praising love and to say that I was the master of the art of love, when I knew nothing whatever of this business, of how anything whatever ought to be praised. So he's saying there, I thought I was going to be good at this. Thought I'd be skillful, and that's why I agreed to join in and take my turn to praise love. But once I heard your speeches, I don't know what I was wrong. I'm not qualified to do this. And why is this? Because he thought he knew what it meant to praise something. How does he put it? When I knew nothing whatever of this business of how anything whatever, not just love, but anything, how anything whatever ought to be praised. In my foolishness, I thought you should tell the truth about whatever you praise, that this should be your basis, and that from this a speaker should select the most beautiful truths and arrange them most suitably. I was quite vain, thinking that I would talk well and that I knew the truth about praising anything whatever. But now it appears that this is not what it is to praise anything whatever. Rather, it is to apply to the object the grandest and the most beautiful qualities, whether he actually has them or not. And if they are false, that is no objection. For the proposal apparently was that everyone here make the rest of us think he is praising love, not that he actually praise him. And so what is his criticism here basically to Agathon, right? He's saying, and not just Agathon, I should correct myself, all of the speeches so far, he's being sarcastic. So I thought praising something meant this, but apparently it's what y'all are doing. I don't think he really means that. He thinks he's right and they're wrong. But what is the main distinction that you hear there in that passage I just read? I would argue it's very much similar to the distinction he makes, Socrates, at the beginning of Plato's Apology. If you remember the first reading that we covered in this class, way back when, it's been so long, we've had so many cancellations and obstacles in our way. If you remember at the beginning of the Apology, Socrates distinguishes himself from his speakers. We didn't get to hear the speakers before him. We just assumed they said some mean things about Socrates. But he says that they were very convincing and that he was carried away in spite of himself. So persuasively did they speak. And yet, he said, nothing of what they said is true. And so he says, they said that I speak persuasively. I don't speak persuasively at all. I just speak the truth. Now, I wouldn't say that there's an exact parallel here, but there's something similar. He's saying that, I'll reread that passage. I thought you should tell the truth about whatever you praise, that this should be your basis, and that from this, a speaker should select the most beautiful truths and arrange them most suitably. I was quite vain, thinking that I would talk well and that I knew the truth about praising anything whatever. Right? He still thinks he's right. He's being false. This is false modesty here, right? That is the proper way to praise something. Tell the truth about it, as he puts it, and that should be your basis. Be honest about what you're praising. Point out all the good things that are really good about it, and arrange those beautiful, good things properly. Uh, Select the most beautiful truths and arrange them suitably, as he puts it here. But now it appears that that's not what it means to praise anything. Rather, what it means is it's to apply to the object the grandest and most beautiful qualities, whether he actually has them or not. And if they're false, that is no objection. For the proposal apparently was that everybody here make the rest of us think he's praising love, and not that he actually praised them. This language also reminds me a bit about when Socrates says that the Olympic victor makes you think you're happy. I actually make you be happy. Remember, he says that you give the Olympic victor when he's on trial in the Apology. He says the Olympic victor gives you this sort of false sense of happiness. You're happy that, oh, we won, gold medal for Athens. It's like, yeah, but what did you do? He's the one that got the gold medal. And how long are you going to be happy because that he won? I make you actually be happy. I make you reflect on what the good life is. I make you try to live a good and just and virtuous life. And that's going to make you happy, I suppose was his argument there. But he's making a similar thing. You know, don't talk about the truth. You know, kind of had this sort of illusion that appears to be nice and fluffy and sounds good. It sounds good. Maybe it's persuasive. It's rhetorically nice. It's good rhetoric, but it's not true. You know, and so that's not how you're supposed to praise something, right? What if I said, you know, I'm just looking at Olivia's the first name on my screen here, right? What if I started telling you, Olivia, I hope you're listening. Some of you, I know some of you guys just log in for the credit and don't even listen, but like, what if I started telling you, Olivia, that you know, I really admire you, Olivia. You're really amazing. I love the way you're such a great tennis player. Or no, wait, it's golf, right? That's it. You're a golfer. I love your golf game. You have a really great golf game. I love your, like, you get like a hole-in-one. I've never gotten a hole-in-one. That's just amazing. And I'm assuming you, maybe you are. I don't know. Maybe you are a great golfer, but I'm just making something up. I don't even know anything about golf, right? You'd be kind of like, thanks, I guess. Is that really the proper way to praise someone or something? To just make something up about it? Socrates says, no, we've got to be honest about what we're praising. And so they kind of take the hint and they're like, look, Socrates, just praise it however you think is proper. You know, speak however you think is the right way to speak. But he can't really do this until he starts like chastising them more. And this is where he gets to the section of our reading that's labeled Socrates questions Agathon. And this is another section that I'm going to skip over a little bit. I'm not going to read a lot of the dialogue between them, but this is a bit of a dialectic. We'll talk about dialectic probably next class. There's a bit of a back and forth here where Socrates, arguably maybe it's not dialectic proper. We'll talk about that again later, but there's definitely what you might call the Socratic method, where Socrates is asking these questions. He's drawing answers out of Agathon. He's basing his questioning on previous claims that were made, not just by Agathon, but also by the other people who gave speeches, the other people in the dialogue. So what he starts asking him about is, well, let's look at your previous definitions of love, your previous accounts of love, and let's look at some of the truth, and let's be honest about love. And he seems to find this common theme amongst all of these approaches to eros is that they all involve a kind of a desire. That love is desire. When we love something, we desire that thing. Okay, it's the opposite of an aversion. You wouldn't say that I'm in love with something or someone if it repulsed you, if it drew you away from it. And when you desire something, you want to have it, you want to possess it. So love always involves desire. Socrates is able to sort of pull this out of Agathon through his back and forth questioning, his sort of Socratic method. And he hones in on this idea that it's always of something. There's always an object of desire. And that object is always something beautiful. Now that part, that's the third bullet point I've got up here on my screen. That's a controversial claim, I suppose, that desire is always of something beautiful. You might argue, well, I know this guy who likes this person who's not very beautiful. But I think maybe we can all perhaps agree on the less controversial claim is that whenever we do have a desire of something, whenever we desire something, or we would maybe claim to love something, we at least perceive it as beautiful. We perceive it as, the person who's in love perceives it as beautiful. And so after some clarification, they arrive at this definition, and they agree that if we want to define what love truly is, it involves desire, so it's a desire. But what is it a desire for? It's a desire for something, for a thing, but that thing is always beautiful, or at least, to be less controversial, at least that thing is perceived as beautiful. Okay, so where's he going with this? What's his point? Well, some could argue he's loading the deck here because he's going to use this definition against them. He's going to say, well, look, Agathon, because of what you say and you agreed to here, that love is a desire for beautiful things, I think you're going to have to retract what you said earlier about love, namely that love is beautiful himself. I guess we're still talking about love as if it were a deity. So he talks about him as himself. Okay, so love is not beautiful. Why would he say that? What's the argument? Who remembers this from the reading? I think it's at the bottom of page 41 where he kind of attacks him here. A thing that desires something of which it is in need. Otherwise, if it were not in need, it would not desire it. I can't tell you, Agathon, how strongly it strikes me that this is necessary. But how about you? Right, so what is his point there? He's like, well, if you desire something, then you're in need of it. Okay? Imagine you have a friend who just bought a new house. Maybe your friend wins the lottery and he's able to buy his dream home. He or her, right? You go to your friend's house and you go and they're like showing you around their mansion, and they tell you about, oh, this is so great that I won the lottery. I got to buy this house. And then you go to the backyard, or you go to the front yard, let's say, and your friend looks at this house and says, I wish I could have this house. I really desire this house. I want this house. And you're like looking at them and you're like, but I thought you said you paid for it. Yeah, I did. I bought it. It's mine. I own it. Then why'd you say you desire it? Why do you say you want it? Because I do. I really want it. I wish I could have this. Well, you do have this, right? So it doesn't make sense to say you would desire something that you already have. So if that's the case, then why does that mean that love is not beautiful? Love can't be beautiful. Well, remember, here's the definition. Maybe let me get rid of this bullet point. This really shouldn't be a bullet point. This is sort of like the result of the bullet points, right? This is sort of the punchline, the definition of love. Love is a desire for beautiful things. So given that definition, why does Socrates want to argue that love is not beautiful? Love is
Is it
not
because, is it because you can't desire it if you already have it?
right, right. Yeah, exactly. So it's like why would love desire beauty if love already has beauty? And this kind of seems a little sketchy if you think about it, but he does clarify. He says now some people will say things like I desire health, or what else does he say? I desire to be strong. And they might say this when they already are healthy, and they might say this when they already are strong. But Socrates clarifies. This is on the next page. I won't read it, but he kind of clarifies. He says, sure, like some people will say this, but what they really mean is not that they want to be healthy. What they mean is they want to maintain their health, right? That they want to keep that health forever. And if they're strong and they say they want to be strong, what they really mean is they want to maintain that strength or maybe get stronger or whatever. So you can't desire something if you already have it. What you really desire is, you could say maybe I desire the person I love, even if you're already in a relationship with them. But what you really mean by that, technically, is that you want to continue in that relationship. You want the feeling that you have now to continue indefinitely into the future. You don't have that love in the future. You don't have the future. The future's not here yet. All you have is what you have now. And so you want the love that you have now to continue on indefinitely. And so love can't be beauty if it desires beauty. Does that mean that love is ugly? If you're not beautiful, does that necessarily mean that you're ugly? What do you think? Anybody have any opinion on this?
I don't think that. I disagree.
I disagree too. Yes, for sure. Isn't surely there's something in between, right? Like it's not like you've got I guess you got your Quasimodo on one side, the ugly, right? The Hunchback of Notre Dame cartoon character, so I can make fun of him. And then on the other, the beautiful, handsome, Professor Ross, the top. And then I don't know what you'd call the middle, right? Average looking, maybe, I guess. So love is average looking, perhaps. This is at least what Diotima tells Socrates. And we get to, this is page 45, where we get to, I guess, Socrates' his version of his speech, which he claims to be relaying or relating to us from his encounter with Diotima. Who's Diotima? She was this holy woman. She was a seer, a prophetess. How does he put it? She predicted a famine and saved lives or something like that, prevented all these deaths. And he went to speak with her about eros, about love. And all that he's telling them is what he really learned from her, which, and again, she supposedly has this divine wisdom. I find it quite curious that this is something Plato does quite a bit. You saw it in the Apology. Remember, Socrates heard about how he was the wisest through the oracle at Delphi, and he learned all his he learned all his wisdom really indirectly, but somehow through some divine messenger. And same is true here, right? Diotima is relaying this message from who knows her divine wisdom, and she schooled Socrates when he was much younger. And Socrates admits that he himself had very similar views about love as Agathon did, and that he gave a similar speech as Agathon, and spoke of love to Diotima, and she chastised him. And she, this is at the bottom of 45. He says, "What do you mean, Diotima? Is love ugly then and bad?" And she says, "Watch your tongue. Do you really think that if a thing is not beautiful, it has to be ugly?" And this is where we get into this interesting back and forth, and this kind of locating love within this great hierarchy of beings. You've got ugly at the bottom of the spectrum, the beautiful at the top of the spectrum. I said average looking. That's sort of what I put in the middle here. Then he also mentions, she says that love is not really good, but love's not bad either. It's sort of neutral. And then on the top of 46, this is something that's quite fascinating. She says, if a thing's not wise, it's ignorant, or haven't you found out that there's something in between wisdom and ignorance? And Socrates asks, what's that? And she says, it's judging things correctly without being able to give a reason. Surely you see that this is not the same as knowing. For how could knowledge be unreasoning? And it's not ignorance either. For how could what hits the truth be ignorance? Correct judgment, of course, has this character. It is in between understanding and ignorance. Okay, let me add, so understanding, noesis, the Greek term, or wisdom, pistis. And then at the bottom is ignorance. I think aletheia, no, aletheia, I think, forgetting, not knowing. And then in the middle, what she's calling correct judgment. And she says this middle thing is, how does she put it? Judging things correctly without being able to give a reason. So it seems like this is quite the common mode of knowing, if that's a way of knowing. I mean, I don't want to get too much into the epistemology, the theory of knowledge here, but correct judgment seems to be kind of what a lot of people have about a lot of things. They might be right, but they don't know why they're right. They were just told the right thing, you know. For instance, they might know that there are 24 hours in a day or 365 days in a year on average, but they don't know like the astronomical astronomical reasonings behind the calendar, but they know the facts. That's maybe a bad example, but I should draw from Plato himself, because she doesn't really do much here, I think, to give any examples. Plato uses this this distinction between correct judgment, correct belief, and knowing something or understanding it. They're two distinct things, obviously, for Plato. And he gives us plenty of examples in other works. In fact, maybe I should insert some of this in my slideshow just to give you guys some references. Where are we at here? I'm trying to find oh, here we go. Insert text box. So there's a famous example from Plato's Meno dialogue. And in the Meno, let me make that bigger. That's really small font. In the Meno dialogue, there's this example that is given of knowing the way to Megara. I don't know if it's the best example, but that's the one that he gives, and that's the one that's most commonly cited. I actually have heard students give me better examples, and I'm actually gonna. I stole one from one of my students a few years ago that I think is a better example. But let's use the one from the Meno, knowing the way to Megara. So if one has wisdom or knowledge or understanding, one actually knows the way. I'm gonna make that smaller. It's kind of obnoxious. Knows the way to Megara. Not Megara, Megara. That is Megara, I guess. Sorry, I've been saying it Megara this whole time. Okay. Knowing the way to Megara. So Megara is a small city state. I suppose walking distance, a day or two from Athens. And Socrates uses this example to kind of illustrate what it means to know versus what it means to have correct belief. Let's say you've lived your entire life in Athens and you've never left the city walls. And you have a friend who travels quite a bit. Your friend just recently, for the first time, took the road to Megara. Now, I'm going to keep saying Megara. Sorry, the road to Megara. Your friend's actually been there a few times. He's been there. He's come back, and he has told you about his adventures, and he's told you about the road and all, which way to go. All these details. Let's say your friend is a really good storyteller. But you've never actually been to Megara. Socrates argues that your friend has wisdom and understanding. He knows the way to Megara because he's actually been there. He knows why you have to avoid certain parts of the road that are dangerous and maybe take this longer route to avoid, pirates or thieves on the road or whatever, right? Ruffians of the night. He knows which inns to stay at and why, and the reasoning behind them. You believe him because he's your friend and you trust him, and he doesn't lie to you. He tells you the truth. And so in the end, you are guided by this. And ultimately, if you follow his directions, you will hit the truth. So as she puts it here, it's not ignorance either. For how could what hits the truth be ignorance? So you're not completely ignorant if you were able to follow and you listened to your buddy and you followed your friend's directions correctly, and your friend told you the truth, you'd probably get to Megara. You would get there. Yes, all things being equal, extenuating circumstances, thrown out, you're going to get there. You follow those directions, you follow the road, you're going to get there. But you don't have the wisdom until you actually know the reasons why and you've actually done it yourself. I think a better example, honestly, though, I had a student who was talking about, he was making something up. I think it was like an HCC. It was a long time ago. I haven't taught an HCC in forever, but I want to say it was one of my HCC students. And he said something like, well, it's almost like, imagine you're in a scenario where there's a ticking time bomb and, you're in the middle of this building and the bomb's about to go off and everyone's like evacuated and the bomb squad is on the way, but they're not going to get there in time. So you're like there and the bomb's going to blow. It's going to kill all these people. So you're on the phone with the bomb squad and they get the bomb expert on. And he's like, we're going to try to get there, but we're speeding. We're running red lights. We got the sirens blaring. Well, I don't know if we're going to make it in less than 5 minutes. You need to tell me some stuff. And so the bomb expert is on the phone with you. You don't know anything about bombs, and the bomb expert asks you questions. What does it look like? What kind of wires does it have? And you answer them correctly. You tell them the truth. They tell you, okay, what you need to do, it's one of these kind of bombs. You need to cut the blue wire first, and then wait for the ticker to sort of slow down a bit. Once you hear the ticker slow down a bit, look for the yellow wire, cut that. I'm just making stuff up, but you see my point. The bomb expert, they understand the reasons why. They know what the yellow wire is. They know what the blue wire is. They know why that type of bomb does what it does, how the mechanics behind it, more or less work. They know the reasons, but you judge correctly because you're on the phone with an expert. You follow their advice, you trust them, and they're right, they're correct, and you're able to detonate or to defuse the bomb, and to make the timer stop. So you're not a bomb expert at that point. You don't know why it worked, but it worked. Similar, you don't know the way to Megara because you never actually been, but if you ask somebody who does have the knowledge, then you do. Okay. I digressed quite a bit there, but that's a really important point for Plato. It's maybe not so important for this dialogue, but next lecture on on Thursday at 1 p.m. when I start wrapping up Plato, this will be something that's probably useful and helpful when we get there. So, love or eros is neither bad nor good, is not ignorant nor wise, but is, just has correct judgment, judges correctly. And then this is the part that is maybe the most shocking. He's not even a god. Eros is not a god. So far, all of these speeches that we've covered, the first 5, we're all assuming, everybody that gave those speeches was operating under the assumption that Eros was a sort of a deity, a god. But she says that Eros is not a god. Does that mean that Eros is a human? No, there's something in between. What is in between the gods, or God, if you're monotheist? What is in between God and human beings, mortals?
Demigods.
Good. That's not the terminology that's used here, but that's pretty much what the Greeks thought. You had these demigods, but that's not where he takes it here, right? You could argue they're definitely not the same thing, but there are parallels with the idea of like angels in the Judeo-Christian tradition. That there are these like messengers that bring messages from God to humans. Excuse me. And oddly enough, this seems to be where he's taking it. But you're right to say demigods. That's probably the more obvious answer if you know anything about Greek mythology. I'm going to stick with the terminology here. She says that he's a great spirit. So spirits. So there's this realm of the spiritual that she refers to. There's this realm of the spiritual that is sort of a bridge between gods and man. And this is where love resides. Love is a great spirit, as she puts it. This is on page 47. And again, if you have a different version, it's line 202E. 202E. He's a great spirit, Socrates. Everything spiritual you see is between God and mortal. What is their function, I ask? They are messengers who shuttle back and forth between the two, conveying prayer and sacrifice from men to gods, while to men they bring commands from the gods and gifts in return for sacrifices. Being in the middle of the two, they round out the whole and bind fast the all to all. Through them, all divination passes. Through them, the art of priests in sacrifice and ritual, in enchantment, prophecy, and sorcery. Gods do not mix with men. They mingle and converse with us through spirits instead, whether we are awake or asleep. He who is wise in any of these ways is a man of the spirit. But he who is wise in any other way, in a profession or manual work, is merely a mechanic. These spirits are many and and various. And one of them is love. So love is a great spirit. He's a messenger between God, the gods, and man. Something he's saying here reminds me a bit of one of the previous speeches. Does anybody have know what I'm talking about when he talks about how love, um, because love is this or is a spirit, and the spirits in general, the spiritual realm is between gods and men. Um, this is sort of responsible for all divination, all of the rites, all the priestly rites, all the ways that people who are religious interact with the gods. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? It's hard to keep track of which speech is which. No one's got a guess. I think this kind of reminds me of Eryximachus. Remember the physician, the doctor? He was saying that like love is this cosmic force that guides medicine, it guides music and poetry, and it guides agriculture. But he also says that it guides religion. That religion is guided by love. So this sort of reminds me of that. What she's saying here, that love is a spirit, and the spirits are these. They help the relation. The gods don't directly communicate with humans. They need these spiritual messengers, and they sort of help us converse. And then we get into this very interesting story of of um, of love's true origin. And one of the reasons I just brought up Eryximachus is you can argue, and I'll try to point it out as we go along. I might skip some, just being absent-minded. But you could argue that Socrates here, so far, he's going to not just correct some of the mistakes that have been made in regards to love by the previous speakers, but in a sense, he's going to draw some truth from each of their speeches. So there's kind of what you might call a callback to the previous speakers. And I just pointed out one of them there, that love guides our relations between the gods and mortals. That might be, you could argue, sort of a callback to Eryximachus. Now, when we get to the speech of Diotima, we get, he tells us what her speech about love was, how she praised love, once she sort of laid out the groundwork. Kind of like Agathon did, you could say. Agathon laid out the groundwork. Here's what love is. Here's love's qualities. She does it a little differently here, but it's a similar strategy. Here's what love truly is. Here's the misconceptions about love. Let me get love straight. Love is average looking, neutral, not good or bad. It has correct judgment. Is a spirit, not a god. And now she's going to tell us a myth. Now, you could argue that a lot of these speakers, particularly Phaedrus and Aristophanes, but even some of the other speakers, they draw from mythology. They draw from the mythical tradition and stories that have been told about love. And Diotima is going to give us her version of the origin of Eros. And let's get a new slide started here. I don't know, we're going to call this, right? The origin of Eros. Where did this god really come from? Okay, so let's look at this. I'm going to read this passage here. It's pretty long. I'm going to pause occasionally to type some stuff into the PowerPoint, though. So let's read here. This is on page 48. It's line 203, C. It's actually a bit above that. If you have a different version, it's a bit above the C. It's almost up to the B. So whenever Aphrodite was born, the gods held a celebration. Okay, so there is the celebration on the same day that Aphrodite was born. So let's put that up here. Aphrodite's birthday party. Now we're talking about the more common Aphrodite, the real hot one, for lack of a better word, right? The real sexy, stereotypical beauty, the bombshell kind of thing. That's the Aphrodite we're talking about. So she's born, the Olympian Aphrodite. They're up on Mount Olympus. Poros, P-O-R-O-S, the son of Metis, was there among them. So let's get that up here. Poros, P-O-R-O-S. And poros actually means, in Greek, way, like make a way for something, or resource. So it's the god of resourcefulness or the god of making a way for something. And Pania, that's kind of interesting. I just thought about this. Poros, there's kind of an equivalent in Hindu. The god Ganesh kind of serves a similar function. But Pania is actually cunning. That's what that literally means. The god of cunning. Or goddess, sorry. Oh no, sorry, that's Metis, not Pania. Pania is poverty. Okay. And so Poros, the son of Metis, was there among them. When they'd feast this Pania, that's poverty. She shows up at the party. So when they'd feast, as Pania came begging, as poverty does when there's a party, and stayed by the gates. Now Poros, remember this is resource or whatever way. Poros got drunk on the nectar of the gods, and he was feeling drowsy. He went into the garden of Zeus, where he fell asleep. Then Pania schemed up a plan to relieve her lack of resources. She would get a child from Poros. So she lay beside him and got pregnant with Love. That is why Love was born to follow Aphrodite and serve her. This has already been mentioned, another callback to, I guess, Pausanias's speech, right? That love is always found with Aphrodite, but there are two Aphrodites, though, in Pausanias's account. He talks about the more primal Aphrodite, the more heavenly Aphrodite, versus the Olympian Aphrodite. But that's why they're always together. Love is born to follow Aphrodite and serve her because he was conceived on the day of her birth. That's why he is also by nature a lover of beauty, because obviously Aphrodite is very beautiful. As son of Poros and Pania. So, and this, my interpretation of Plato, he uses myths as obvious myths. They're lies. They're not true. I don't think Plato, you could say that this is probably Plato's view. Plato wrote this dialogue. Socrates is his hero. Socrates is schooling all these guys on what love truly is. Plato makes it that some divinely wise, like seer woman who has this divine wisdom speaks of love like almost like firsthand knowledge. This seems to be the view that he's endorsing. That's not a super controversial reading of this dialogue. On the other hand, I don't think he wants us to literally believe that there are these like gods up on Mount Olympus and all this stuff. I really don't. I think this is what Plato might call in the Republic, the noble lie. It's a lie, but it points us towards truth. Right? We're just making up a fable. We're making up some story, but it reveals something that really is true about love. So what is true about love? Well, love is attracted to beauty. That's the Aphrodite part. What is the thing about resourcefulness, about finding a way, about being cunning? What about being impoverished? Love is impoverished, okay? Let's read what she has to say, right? So to me, again, this is Plato using art, using myth, using a story to illustrate what's really the case with love. What is love really like? As the son of Poros and Pania, his lot in life is set to be like theirs. So he shares elements of both. In the first place, he's always poor. He's far from being delicate and beautiful, right? Sorry, Agathon. Remember, Agathon said that love was delicate and beautiful? Instead, he's tough and shriveled and shoeless and homeless, always lying on the dirt without a bed, sleeping at people's doorsteps and in roadsides under the sky, having his mother's nature, always living with need. That sounds kind of desperate and pathetic. It kind of reminds me a bit about what Pausanias said earlier in the dialogue. Remember, Pausanias says that we forgive people for doing desperate things, getting on their knees, begging, reciting poetry at the person's doorstep, right? You do that for a job or for money, it's kind of repugnant, but you do it for love, it's kind of, but he says, well, yeah, love is kind of desperate. Love does these dirty things and is always in need and is always in desiring the thing it loves. But on his father's side, he is a schemer after the beautiful and the good, right? His father and his grandmother, right? Grandma's cunning, father's resourceful, always finds a way. He's brave, impetuous, intense, an awesome hunter, always weaving snares, resourceful in his pursuit of intelligence, a lover of wisdom. That literally, philosopher, lover of wisdom is literally what that means, translates as. Through all his life, a genius with enchantments, potions, and clever pleadings. He is, so he loves wisdom. He lacks, he's not ignorant. He's in that middle part. He's a spirit that he loves wisdom. He wants wisdom because he lacks it. Much like Socrates. The only thing about Socrates that makes him so wise is that he knows he lacks wisdom and that he seeks it, that he wants it. He's neither immortal nor mortal. But now he springs to life when he gets his way. Now he dies, all in the very same day. This reminds me a bit about what Agathon said earlier about how love comes and goes. All of a sudden you fall in love with somebody. You don't see it coming. You just, man, I don't know what it is. I love this person. And then all of a sudden you lose it. It could happen within the course of a day. So it's just sort of this, there's love is always, it's always possible to be reborn and reunite, re-sparked, reignited, but it all can always flicker away too. Because he is his father's son, however, he keeps coming back to life, but then he finds his way to always, but then anything he finds his way to always slips away. And for this reason, love is never completely without resources, nor is he ever rich. He is in between wisdom and ignorance as well. In fact, you see, none of the gods loves wisdom or wants to become wise, for they are wise. And no one who is wise already loves wisdom. On the other hand, no one who is ignorant will love wisdom either or want to become wise. For what's especially difficult, this is kind of sad, I kind of agree with this. What's especially difficult about being ignorant is that you are content with yourself, even though you're neither beautiful or good or intelligent. And if you don't think you need anything, of course, you won't want what you think you don't need. So yeah, it's like some of the people that are the most in need of education and understanding and they're the ones that are like, I already know everything. I don't need to be taught. I've already made up my mind or whatever. But let's see. I'm going to skip a lot of this here because we're like getting close to the end of class. We got like about 15 minutes left. I said I would finish the reading, and I'm not even close to the end of it. She says a few more things, right, to sort of draw this out of here, but why is it, this is sort of the next question that they turn to around page 50 or so, line 204E. Once she discusses love's nature here, right? That here's the true story, the true myth. Forget that silly story you heard about Aristophanes telling, and all the myths that have been mentioned earlier. This is the real story about love. this will illustrate the true nature of love, that he takes that eros is always going to have these qualities about it. But now we have to look at the sort of, I guess you might say, the bright side. What is it about love that's so great? Why do we desire things that we desire? Why do we love these things? Why do we have a desire for beautiful things? If that's what love truly is, if love is really let's back up to that slide. Remember the definition? Love is a desire for beautiful things. Okay. Why is it that we desire them? Why? What do we hope to achieve by possessing these beautiful things? That's the next question they turn to. Anybody have any guesses, right? I guess you could say, like, what is the why desire love? Why desire beautiful things? I guess, sorry. Why desire love? Sorry, love is desire. Why desire beautiful things? Why do we desire anything? Yeah, I mean, really, what do you expect to when you want something that you don't have? What do you expect will happen when you get that thing?
You'll become happy.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. You hit the nail on the head, by the way. Right. That's there's a lot more to the argument, but that's basically where they end up. They're like, well, you want them because you're going to get this, and like, well, eventually you think there's going to be this contentment. There's going to be happiness, right? So happiness is really the goal, and that's sort of the selfish way of looking at it, right? We're looking at love on a very individual, selfish level. When we're asking why desire beautiful things, why do we have this feeling of love, it was because we expect happiness, we expect contentment, fulfillment. But I should maybe elaborate a little bit on the word happiness here, because it's translating the Greek word eudaimonia. And eudaimonia is really, I mean, so some scholars, I think very convincingly argue, many of them argue that happiness is a horrible translation for this word, but we don't really have a good approximate English term. Eudaimonia is more like, it's the way Aristotle defines it is he says it's a virtuous activity of the soul, or an activity of the soul in accordance with complete excellence. That's his sort of philosophical definition of happiness. But you could see it as a sort of self-fulfillment, a self-actualization, becoming fulfilled. So you could argue in a way that this is a bit reading into it, but you could argue in a way this is a bit of a callback to Aristophanes' speech that love is completing, right? Becoming complete. You're finding your other half. Eudaimonia is different, right? For Aristotle, eudaimonia is supposed to be self-actualized. Sure, you need friends and you need other people to be happy, but it's your own actions, your own activities, your own habits that you form that are able to bring this about, according to Aristotle. But that's Aristotle. I want to get too much into him because we're on Plato now. But you could argue that this passage is almost like it's a very simplified version of an argument you get from Aristotle. You could accuse Aristotle of kind of ripping off Plato here without giving him credit, because it's sort of like, well, why do we do anything? Why do you want beautiful things? You want beautiful things because you think beautiful things are good. And why do you want good things? Because you think if you have things that are good, you'll be happy. And why do you want to be happy? Well, you want to be happy just because you want to be happy. It's a self-sufficient aim. Why would you want to be happy? Just for the sake of itself. But as I was saying a moment ago, this is looking at it from a very individualistic, kind of selfish motivation. Why do I want these things? Why do I love things? But she turns to, I guess you might say, a more broad question. And I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but sort of like, what is the function of love? What is and I'm still capitalizing love because we're talking about eros, right? Still thought of as this great spirit, I suppose, not a god now, but a spirit, still getting a proper name. But she's asking, what is the function of love? It sort of the next question she turns to. Um, oh, that's not the next question she turns to. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm in a big hurry to try to get. I'm like got 10 minutes left. I'm trying to like get like 20 pages done here, but probably not a good idea. I probably should be more modest. Um, she said something like, "Why is it that some people?" Hold on a second. Okay, yeah. Why is it that some people are called lovers and other people are not called lovers, right? So this is, we're going to have to hold off probably till next meeting for this question. What is the function of love in the grand scheme of things, right? Why is, if you were God and you were creating the universe, let's say, why would you put love in the universe? That's kind of the question being asked there. What is the function of love? Or if you're a scientist, let's say you're an evolutionary biologist and you're trying to explain the evolutionary function of love. Why in the animal kingdom, if you're just trying to, if you're just trying to think of humans and as another animal, why would we love? Why would animals love? What's the function of it? Does it serve an evolutionary function? Or you can look at it like religious. If you're thinking that God created everything, why did God create the possibility for love? We're going to turn to that question next meeting, okay? But the one I want to kind of stay in order here. She sort of says, well, why are some called lovers but not others? Why do we refer to some people as lovers and we say that some people are in love when we wouldn't say that about other people? If we define love as a desire for beautiful things, it seems like that is true of everybody. Maybe we need to clarify, but it seems like everybody desires beautiful things, doesn't it? Is there anybody in here that's listening right now who doesn't desire beautiful things? They're like, no, I want ugly things. I want things that aren't beautiful. Please, no beauty, just ugly. Please give me as much ugly as possible. No, we all want beautiful things. Now, we might disagree on what beautiful things, what's beautiful, but we all want things that are beautiful. We all want things that we consider beautiful. This is at least what he thinks is non-controversial. And so if everyone is, if everyone desires beautiful things and love is a desire for beautiful things, then wouldn't everybody be called a lover? And so she explained, she says, well, there's a similar problem with the Greek word poet. When a Greek was talking about a poet, they usually meant somebody who wrote poetry. But the word poesis means anybody who makes anything. Poesis is to bring something forth, to create, to bring something about. So really you could say somebody who builds a house is a poet. They bring something forth. I think in English there's a similar ambiguity with the word artist. Usually when you say the word artist, you probably have some guy with a paintbrush in your mind. Some chick, some woman sculpting on a one of those. I'm horrible. What do they call? One of those. I'm getting having a brain fart here. What is it? The thing that spins the freaking poetry jar around or whatever that you use to do the poetry with. Like, you're thinking of somebody who does like an artist that puts art in a museum, a fine artist. But we use the word artist more broad than that. We talk about art, artists, the musicians will call artists, and sometimes we'll even talk about like, the art of the culinary arts, you know, and so there's a similar ambiguity here. So she says, well, yeah, in a way, this is the same thing going on with desiring love. There's some, you know, everyone's a lover in a certain sense, but the ones that we truly call lovers are the ones that love true beauty. Since love is a desire for beautiful things, yeah, sure, everybody desires beautiful things, but not everybody desires truly beautiful things. And what are truly beautiful things? Well, we'll probably have to wait till next lecture to really get into that. And it's probably going to surprise you. Well, maybe it won't. Maybe it won't surprise you if you've been paying really close attention to some of the things that Socrates has already said in previous readings about what's important in life and what we should value and what we shouldn't value and these sort of things. But we're running out of time. I've only got 4 minutes left. I really don't want to push it, but we've got a couple more things to cover as far as Socrates is concerned. You know, what is true love? That means a love of true beauty. What is love's function? Why does it even exist at all? And this will be the last question that we cover before we wrap things up for Plato and kind of move on to the next material. How do we ourselves become true lovers in the true sense of the word? How do we ourselves pursue true beauty? And what is true beauty? These are the questions that we'll have to leave for Thursday's lecture at 1 p.m. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm stopping the PowerPoint. I'm going to stop recording.